There were significant attacks from the Palestinian resistance in the past 48 hours against the genocide forces inside of the Gaza Strip, led primarily by the armed wing of Hamas, the Izz al-Din al-Qassam brigades. So today there was this report, they detonated a tunnel under a Zionist force and targeted 5 occupation military vehicles south of Khan Yunis. So there was a booby trap tunnel that they detonated, and in an area called, what was that area called? Khizan al-Najjar, south of Khan Yunis, they targeted other Israeli D9 bulldozers and other vehicles and machinery with Yasin 105 RPGs and a Shuwadh explosive device that they create and manufacture, alongside another barrel bomb, added by more attacks coming from the armed wing of the PIJ, the Saray al-Quds or al-Quds brigades, who launched missiles on the genocide forces inside of Rafah. So the Palestinian resistance is now clearly popping up more. And in this report, by the way, that came up today about the Al-Qassam brigades specifically, they said after returning from the battle lines, our fighters confirmed the detonation of 3 highly explosive devices. That's in one of them, meaning that these fighters are not even being touched. They're not being seen, they're not being touched, they're returning peacefully, and no one's finding out where they are, showing you the level of, stupidity and failure of the Israeli genocide forces inside of Gaza. Again, confirming what they actually say, that they are having this operation against the people, whether when it comes to blocking every single aid to starve people to death and kill people who need medication and force people to have surgeries, and in many cases unsuccessful, without anesthesia, including children who die because of that, killing infants and fetuses even, with horror images coming on social media, the social media platforms who allow such images to be published. But it's important for people to know what this genocide entity is committing inside of the Gaza Strip, no matter how graphic it is, because it's happening somewhere in the world. But they're not targeting anything to do with the resistance. That's why they are being roasted now. They're being roasted by the Palestinian resistance, who's now clearly decided that they want to take more confrontations against Israel in all parts of Gaza, whether it's in the south, in Khan Yunis, where they're trying to enter in the south, or other parts of Gaza too. And again, Israel is not showing that it has a strategy. Israel is not showing that it has a strategy against the Palestinian resistance. As a matter of fact, their confirmations are leading to more problems internally inside the state of Israel. And one of these problems now is not only with the pilots and the paratroopers and Unit 8200. No, today you have outright, and this was reported just from approximately 3 days ago, Golani Brigade. The Golani Brigade soldiers, they signed a letter to end the war in Gaza and have immediate talks to release the captives, release the Israelis from the Gaza Strip who are held by the Palestinian resistance. And this is spreading like wildfire, and you have people inside of the Israeli army outright calling to stop the war. So 2 weeks ago, when this petition started, some in the Israeli army were criticizing and they were complaining that, well, some of the reservists are, being free at liberty to criticize, and some of those who are serving are, taking a step back, fearful from any potential repercussions. But now it's as if everything fades. It's as if they collapsed to this wall of fear, this historical taboo, this traditional taboo in Israel called the army from hell. And now they're criticizing it outright. They're criticizing outright without any fears of repercussion. And the leaders of the Israeli army, like the chief of staff or the head of the Air Force, for example, despite them threatening to sack some of them, and they have indeed sacked some. With some of their threat, they haven't followed through. Why? Because they have no option. They don't have anyone to replace them. It's like someone has a business and they want to fire one of their staff, and they don't have an alternative, or they don't have a plan B. Similar to, I don't know, the UK leaving the EU without a plan B, something like that. So Israel is struggling heavily, and more criticism is coming from the people inside of the Israeli army now. But one of the most dangerous things that I came across today was actually an article about an Israeli retired major general. His name is Giora Island. Giora Island is a man who held senior figures in the Israeli security establishment. He was the head of the national security in Israel, and he was also a major general in the Israeli army. He made some strong statements today against Benjamin Netanyahu and against the state of Israel. And the most important and dangerous statements that he made is that Israel will be having no elections in the future. So there was this report in the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv on Giora Island saying there will be no elections. The government will make sure they don't defeat him at the ballot box. Defeat him in reference to Benjamin Netanyahu. Why is he saying that there will be no elections? What's going to happen? And he was asked, aren't you being like too dramatic that, oh, Israel will have no elections? He said, no, actually, the rationale is very simple. Turning a democracy, as he's calling it, of course, a democracy, from a democracy to a dictatorship takes several steps. The man is already trying to control the army, the security establishment, sacking the head of the Shin Bet and appointing someone who will be another poodle. He is actively seeking to control the committee that appoints judges in the Israeli High Court or Supreme Court. And all of these are steps that are initially taken before more dramatic measures are taken. Therefore, Benjamin Netanyahu, as soon as he starts implementing more of these actions, he will have any excuse to control, dictate, and force the Israeli public to submit to his will. At the end of the day, according to him in that article, if you're talking about democracy, you're talking about like an oath or mutual trust between the people and the state, where the people will have certain sacrifices for the state, in many cases of taxation, or like doing things that risk their lives, like being sent to war, to protect the actual state. And the way Benjamin Netanyahu is moving on with his actions in relation to the continued genocide, despite constant criticism, the lack of reaching to an agreement, and him appointing people who will only delay any potential agreement, him opposing suggestions and advice from the security establishment on his approach towards the war or the genocide in Gaza, him sacking or forcing the previous IDF chief of staff to resign, now officially sacking Ronen Bar and facing confrontations with the Supreme Court, then opening so many fronts so that if one front de-escalates, he can have an excuse, escalate another front, throw some gasoline in, and have more excuses to get himself out of trouble when it comes to the court cases and hearings that he is facing on a weekly basis, and tell them, I need an exemption, I have an exemption, I have something urgent to do, and I cannot attend. And they will tell him, yes, sure, Prime Minister, you don't have to come today because I need to make an important decision, or I have a security meeting. So according to that rationale of Giora Island, the retired Major General, Netanyahu will easily lead Israel to a place where he will actually cancel the elections, because the elections are in October 2026. And judging by how long this has gone so far now, the fact that the man tried to delay and actually delayed ceasefire agreements going against the Israeli negotiating delegation's will and the will of the majority of the Israeli population who want to stop the war, and doing all of these things, well, he now has a poodle in the form of Ron Dermer leading the negotiating delegation, who was heavily criticized by the families of the prisoners of war. Yesterday, we spoke about the criticism that came from the families of the prisoners of war after they met him, where they said we felt hopeless and powerless, and there was no action plan, and we were not given any deadlines whatsoever. He only spoke about 3 to 6 months with no action plan whatsoever, meaning that Benjamin Netanyahu, well, he actually has the capacity, he has the power, and he has the people to lead Israel to places it has never been before. And that would include dramatic moves such as outright canceling the elections or manipulating them to a level where they would secure Benjamin Netanyahu's position in power for the rest of his life.